Um, so I don't consider myself a deep student of DSA. I know a little bit based on the presentation you all made and the piece that was in The Nation about a month and a half ago. The things that I heard at your presentation that stuck with me were things like the program that came out of New Orleans with the tail light checks. I think that kind of direct, local, community-based problem solving that both helps the individual and prevents somebody from getting harassed by police or by anybody else is a terrific service to the community. And so while I don't have the lens that you all have in terms of seeing a problem through that set of eyes, I think it's a very welcome way to think about problem solving. And I would be open to your suggestions about how the city could take the things we already do and change the way we think about doing it so that it has more of that grassroots, preventative, service delivery, community-based approach.
I guess the focus of my question is what socialist policy is implemented in other cities, or even on like free buses, for example. You talked about being pro-union. But we are workers. We are left of center. We are very pro using all of our collective resources to help one another. What kind of policies specifically would you what kind of policies would you embrace with that kind of ethos?
Also cooperatives.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think all of that. I know a little bit more about cooperatives than I know about some of the other areas, and I think the co-op movement is a very strong and progressive movement. I know Eric Griego from down in Albuquerque has gone over to Spain to study perhaps the world's most successful co-op operation. And whether we can adopt that in Santa Fe, I don't know. I certainly think it'd be a good experiment. I think there's a lot of work around ESOPs and worker ownership that is worth exploring. I don't think the city necessarily has a role in making that happen, but I think the city certainly shouldn't prevent it from happening or do anything to obstruct it. If you think about the broader context of your question, and it kind of goes to your question, what is the role of government compared to the role of being an entrepreneur? The answer is that government's job is to use the resources of the public sector to provide services for people who have the least capacity to provide for themselves, and to pool our collective resources to solve problems that we can't do individually, and to make investments that are typically too large for any individual or any one part of the economy to take on single-handedly. If you look at, I do love entrepreneurship. I do think it's an interesting way to solve problems. There's a terrific book written by a woman economist who tracks the iPhone, of which I have one. Almost every part of the iPhone was created by a government investment in terms of the technology, in terms of the capabilities, in terms of the basic research. You may think that's not a great example of socialist thinking or government-led innovation, but that is how the country historically has solved big problems. We use our public resources to put money into things we care about, and then that becomes the market leader so that people can get some benefits from it. So I think when you think about the issue of renewable energy, the city ought to be putting solar panels on roofs and helping people solarize their homes. I don't know what you call that. Is that socialism, or I don't know the label. But to me, that's an appropriate use of city resources for public good and for long-term public good. Should the city continue to make a difference with people? The largest MIHO user population tends to be senior citizens who fall down and in their homes and end up with the kind of health problems that are derivative of that episode. The city can prevent that from happening by the MIHO program. We not only make those individuals' lives better, we save public resources and end up with a much better approach to health care. I don't know whether that's socialism or not, but it's a good way to solve problems. It's using the public's resources to get ahead of an issue rather than chasing it later, and to do it collectively. And that's fundamentally why we ask the government to be a provider of services and an investor in things that the private sector won't touch, because they're either not profitable or they are too far in the future for the private sector to see why they should do it. I don't know, that may not have answered your question.
Well, we can talk later. It's
All right.
Could I follow up on that a little bit?
Absolutely.
I'm not up to speed on what the current status of it is, but I understand that Santa Fe does have a business incubator
Yes, it does.
for startup businesses.
Yes, it has.
And I wonder what your take is on that. It seems to me that a lot of cities try to do things like that, throw a lot of resources at it, and end up maybe giving a kickstart to these companies that then move away.
Yeah.
But I also wonder if that's a possible venue for this city to invest in starting cooperative businesses.
Yeah, and cooperating with businesses that want to do it anyway. I mean, I happen to be a big fan of what Meow Wolf is doing. I'm a big fan of what Descartes Labs is doing, because we are starved for the kind of businesses that will actually be 21st century businesses and have the capacity to have the blend of technology and entertainment. If you're a TED fan, you know, technology, entertainment, and design is the economy of the future. And Meow Wolf is a technology, entertainment, and design company. Meow Wolf is more technology and data analysis, or Descartes Labs is more technology and data analysis, but we want this economy to be more than old people who come here to retire. We want it to be an economy of young people doing things that will sustain us into the future and make this a great place to live, where the jobs are primarily green, knowledge-based, and low resource utilization. So I think the city ought to be involved in those conversations. If you read, I'm a great reader of city reports. There are two reports on the city's economy, one called the Crossroads Report, it's up on the city's website, another done by the League of Women Voters last year, both of which say pretty much the same thing, which is the city has an economic development budget. It doesn't really use it very well. It's kind of sprays a little money in a lot of places and doesn't get a lot back for the money we spray. I think we should be in the business of trying, as a city, to work with people who want to start their businesses, grow a co-op, be involved in an incubator. Cities all over, successful cities all over do that. We ought to be a great place for that to happen. If you think about the quality of life, if you think about our culture and our history, we are a creative community. This is a creative economy. So I think the city ought to be a great partner in helping people take a shot at their dream. That would be something, as mayor, I would be uniquely qualified to do, having started Fast Company magazine, having vetted business plans from all over. I think I'd be a very good partner, and the city would become a good partner to work with individuals who would like some help in getting their own idea off the ground. And I think that's appropriate. We don't have a huge budget, we don't have an investment budget per se, but we have a catalyst budget and a way to help provide the container within which startups can happen.
So Ellen, since you got only less than 5 minutes left, if there's anything up there that you feel like, here's a 1-sentence address of the remaining ones.
Fireshed plan I need to know more about, but if your point is that we are very much at risk to a big fire problem because of dry conditions, and we don't want to be the next California, you're absolutely right. We have some fire prevention work that goes on courtesy of the fire department, where they go out and inspect your neighborhood, your community, look at where the fire issues would be and who would be hurt the most. I honestly don't feel like I'm up to speed to give you a very qualified answer on that, but I'm not ignorant of the notion that it's really important. My own personal motivation.
Alan, I can withdraw that.
All right.
Yeah, there's probably more important questions.
Well, it's just that it's the thing I'm worst at speaking about.
Well,
I really like talking about the ideas much more than I like talking about myself personally. Yes, sir. What am I missing?
Number one?
We did that.
We got it.
Yeah.
We did that poorly, but we did it. We did that. We did that.
Transparent.
We did. Oh, how to make the city more transparent. Let's end on that point. So I think it's a great observation. And I have studied and come from and worked with cities where they do a much better job than we do. A few ideas that I would be very eager to implement. One is the city's website is not a very good reporting mechanism for how well we're doing on a whole host of issues. When I worked in the mayor's office in Portland a bunch of years ago, again, interestingly enough, goes back to your question about private sector, public sector. The metaphor we used back then was this, and maybe it speaks a little bit to your question. The city is a publicly traded corporation. It's a metaphor. Why is it a publicly traded corporation? Because we're all shareholders. We all own, it's like pension fund capitalism. We all own a share in the city of Santa Fe. If you are a shareholder in the city of Santa Fe, what do you expect in the way of information? At a minimum, you expect an annual report on how well you've been served. You deserve an annual report on your tax dollars, how they're allocated, and done in a way that is easy for you to read or follow. When we did this in Portland 30, 40 years ago, there was no such thing as the web, so we did it in a printed document. But you could easily create an annual report or a rolling monthly report that's a report to the shareholders on a whole set of performance metrics, everything from clean water, clean air, police and fire services, crime, data, transit ridership. You could actually collect that data without a lot of trouble. I have proposed the idea of a position called a navigator, which we have in hospitals all over the country. If you go into many hospitals, there's an individual with an iPad who asks you your name, your contact information, and why you're going into that hospital, and they will then track your visit and ask you how was your service of your visit. That's a way of providing that kind of transparency and feedback so that you really are the person who is the user of city services driving the quality and the evaluation of those city services. I have said that if I get elected mayor, I will continue to do house parties after the election. Many candidates get elected and then the election's over and then you don't go into anybody's living room till 3 years later when you pick up where you left off. I think that's not transparent and not accountable, and I would continue my meetings in people's living rooms. So I do believe that with the technology we have and with the ability to collect and present data, there's no reason why the people of Santa Fe shouldn't know the critical performance metrics of how well we're doing on a variety of delivery of services. And the more you put it out there, the more you can hold the city accountable, and presumably the better the city would want to do to increase your sense of satisfaction.
Can I do a quick follow-up?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very short answer.
I don't do short answers.
It could be a short answer.
I'll try.
Would you be supportive of whistleblowers making it safe for them to report waste, fraud, and abuse in our city departments without retribution as mayor?
Yes. And I would also support, as we've said in many of our forums, I think we do a very bad job of dealing with wage theft. And I would have said I support and encourage the creation of a bilingual hotline so that people who are afraid because of the immigration issue that they will be punished for reporting and asking for justice when it comes to wage theft. You can't expect people to report wage theft if they're going to get deported for doing it. So I think on all those fronts the answer is yes. I have overstayed my welcome, but I really appreciate it. I think this is, for me, I don't know about you all, but for me this is what makes running for office fun, because these are really good questions and your concerns are super, and where I was inadequate, try to help me make a better candidate by telling me how you would solve these problems. The election is March 6th. It's ranked choice. Do the right thing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.